Hey, what's up, guys? It's Walks here, and we're going to get started looking at classes. Now, in my opinion, this unit on classes is the most important unit of the grade 11 course. I wouldn't say it's the most useful. We did that unit. Methods, to me, are the most useful thing you can learn in this whole grade 11 course. But to me, classes is the most important unit because potentially it's the one we're going to expand on if you take more computer science. It's where programming went. But let's start with this. I'm just going to write the word down. Class. And can you tell me any other words that are related to that? In other words, words like class that have maybe a prefix or a suffix attached to it. Like class something. Classes, okay, let's write that down. Classes. Classy, yeah, let's put that one down. What else? Get a little more technical. Okay, think of it in science class. When you take bugs and you put them into different classification, okay? So classify and classification. Okay? All of these are kind of related. All of these words kind of mean that we're grouping stuff. Okay? So again, for example, if I said, hey, look at this thing here. What would you classify it as? And for those of you on the video, what I just put up was one of these things. And I'm asking you guys to classify that right now. What would you classify that as? A chair, okay? You could classify it as a chair. And I heard someone else say you could classify it as a stool, okay? So I'll say, okay, I'm going to classify that a chair. And then I grab this one and I go, well, let's make a terrible balancing act here. Would you classify that as a chair? Would you group it in the same category as the other one as a chair? Sure you could, but would you group it with the stool? No. So when we classify stuff, we're kind of particular about how we do it, right? So right now I'll classify all of you as students. You're all in that classification. However, in this room, I have other classifications. So I have the students who are doing the computer science 40S course, and the ones that are doing the 30S course. And then I have special students who, fit a different category. So we do that all the time. We classify and put things into classifications. So this word is not a word you haven't been familiar with before. All right. So let's start our look at this very important unit in classes. Okay, let's start with, again, a conceptual thing. I'm going to actually dim the lights here a little bit today. My apologies to you 40S students. You're going to have a couple minutes in the lights because this is so important conceptually. Everywhere you look around the world, you see objects. Okay, we do that as human beings. We see people, we see animals, we see cars, we see walks, we see all these objects. Okay, we think in terms of objects. We objectify things as a human being. This also involves an abstract quality or a quality of abstraction, which allows us to see beyond simple things and put things into groups. So for example, when you see your computer screen, you don't look at individual dots. You look at the big picture. When you're on the beach, you don't see all the individual grains of sand. You see the big beach. When you watch a movie, whether it's on TV, on your computer, or you actually go to the movie theater, you know in your mind that you're watching a series of pictures that are being flipped very quickly in front of you. But you just allow that to happen, and you think abstractly, and just allow it to imagine that it is a movie. We do that as humans. So we are able to group things and look abstractly at things. Okay? This is easy for us as human beings. We also objectify the world, which means, again, we put objects into categories or into classes. Okay? So, for example, we could make a class of stuff called school stuff. We can classify people. We'll say, well, these people are classified as my friends. These people are classified as my family. These people are classified as Peters. That's a small category, but you put them in there. Or enemies. Okay? And sometimes People can occupy different categories, but we're still categorizing them or classifying them. If I look up the word object in Google, the definition for object as a noun is a material thing that can be seen and touched. Similarly, if I look up the word class as a noun, I'll get a set or category of things having some property or attribute in common. Okay, so let's try that. We took these two things and we said these can both be classified as a chair. What things do they have in common that classifies them as a chair? What would you say?
4 legs.
Okay, 4 legs. Could I have a chair without 4 legs?
Yes.
Okay, but it should have a leg of some kind, right? Okay, so that's something we could... Now, well, how else can I classify them as chairs?
Sittable.
That I can sit on them, right? So in a way, if I sit on this table over here, I'm kind of classifying it as a chair at this point. If I have Peter kneel down on the floor and I sit on Peter, he could be classified as a chair. So I like the way you guys did that because it kind of brings out 2 important things. You classified these objects based on things about them, like the fact that they had legs. But the other one was things or actions you could do, like sitting is an action more so than a property. So that's what I'm saying here. Even the dictionary definition matches up with where we're going in this unit. Let's go another direction. What if I classified things as animate and inanimate? Alive and dead, right? So I could say, well, this stapler on my desk is inanimate. Okay? Dawson, you are an animate object. You are alive, right? That's a way you could categorize things. But ultimately as well, like we just said, I want to break it down so that we can think about the attributes of an object and the behaviors of an object. And if this was biology class, I bet you the bio teacher would also say that we classify things like genotypes based on attributes and behaviors. Okay? How do we classify certain types of fish? How has it become a shark? Well, it's usually based on some attribute that fish is then therefore categorized as a shark, or some behavior that makes it a shark. So that's very easy for us to do because we do that all the time. And that's what we're going to connect to coding. In object-oriented programming, we try to model this behavior that we do in the real world and apply it to something called a class structure in our coding. And it makes coding relate a little more to the real world. Here's the simple way. This is what I want you guys to remember. In computer science, a class is a collection of properties and methods. Those are computer science terms. A class is properties and methods. Let's expand the definition beyond computer science, though. So yes, it's properties and methods. So a class is like an object. The properties are things to describe that object. They're attributes of the object, or they're things about it, right? So if I put the stool up, you could say, well, it has a blue color, it has a certain weight, it has a certain height. Those are things about it. The methods, which is a computer science term we're already familiar with, are more like actions or behaviors or functions or things that it can do. So with this stool, if I was to define methods, I'd say, well, you can sit on it, you can put things, you can carry it, you can move it. Those are things it can do. So this is the way we're going to look at this unit, as classifying things in terms of properties and methods. Now, if this was English class, let me back up a step. If I was sitting, if this is Mr. McWilliams' class right now, and I said, this is a noun, okay? What would this be? What's a language arts term for things that describe a noun? What's the adjective? Although, Liam, you're supposed to be doing something else. That's correct. Okay, no answer unless you're one of my 3. What would this word be then? In English class, a action word is called a what? What's the word for that? Verb, right, a verb. You got it. So another way you can think of these is nouns, adjectives, and verbs. Excellent, you got it. Okay, so now we got to put this into computer science terms, okay? So the properties are essentially going to be variables, right? That's like we can make a variable to describe size and weight and stuff like that. We can make integers to maybe keep track of age. We can make strings to use words inside of them. We can have booleans to determine if it's alive or dead. So those are easy to use with variables. We can even use something as complicated as an array. It's still a variable, but those will be used for properties. Methods, well, we already know what a method is in computer science. We know how to write them. We know that they can return stuff. They can have parameters if we need them. So that fits nicely as well. So properties are the variables in arrays. Methods are methods. Okay? Now, the next point I want to make is, what's the difference between an object and a class? They seem to be the same idea, but they're kind of not. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to grab these two things again. Hold them up. What did we classify these as? Chair. So which one's the chair? Both. So the class defines multiple things. This is a specific chair. This is what's called an object. An object is a specific instance of a class. This is also an object. Both of these objects are chairs. So what you do, the relationship is, you have one class, but you can have multiple objects that are all part of that class. You know what? You've already seen this. Okay? But give me a second to keep defining it. Okay? Objects are specific. So that's a specific chair. Classes are general. These are all chairs in the room. Okay? So, for example, if we create a classification called food, food is a very general category. But then we might make a specific type of food called apple. Apple's the object, food is the class. Okay? So you can have very specific objects under a very general class or classification. Again, this should not be that difficult. You do this naturally. However, I want to introduce this word, which is a more computer science type word, which is that this is an instance of the chair class. Okay? So this is a specific instance of a chair. Okay? And that word is used more in computer science terms. And actually, here's a really fancier one. When I build a chair right now, I am instantiating a chair. That's taking the word instance and making it into a verb. All right. Here's a simpler example. You've seen code like this before. But now let's analyze it with new vision. The word string is the class. That is the object. An object of this class. Okay? String is the class, word is an object. And I know that because I can use this same class to create multiple objects. Each of those are different objects, but they're all strings. Just like you're all sitting in specific chairs, but they're all chairs, right? So we've seen this in code before, and now we're going to kind of write our own versions of this. So you can use one class to make multiple instances of that class. Okay, so again, a class has properties and methods. Things about it, things it can do. Variables, arrays, functions, procedures, adjectives, verbs. We use the class to create objects. Objects are instances of the class. So we instantiate an object when we do this. Okay, so this is the way we're going to go. We're going to make a class called person. These are going to be some of the properties of the person. Name, age, gender, whether they're alive or dead. We could make more. We could make hair color and shoe size. You'd get the point though, I think. That's more than enough for you to get the idea. We're going to give a person some actions. We're going to say you can be born and you can die. Those are the basic person actions. Talk. I know not every person can talk, but we'll make that. And have a birthday. Again, we could do more. We could do walking and punching and kicking and all that. But this will give us a general idea. This will be the class, properties, and the methods. This is what we're going to do when we start writing the code for this. Now, let's go a little bit deeper. Okay, let's now relate it more to computer science. So, name, okay, well, as a property, that could be a string, right? String would hold their name. Age, integer. Didn't have to be an integer. We could use a double. But we don't generally express our ages in decimal values. We could. Maybe you guys did. I think you guys did once, right? Was there a point, Dawson, where you were 8.5 or 8 3/4? Do you still express your age that way? No. That's sad. When did that die? Oh, so that's when your innocence died at 9? Okay. Gender. Now, again, I'm not here to judge. We could expand that gender category into multiple categories. But why don't we just go with something simple like male or female? For me, then we could use a Boolean, right? We don't have to. We could define it different ways. And alive, I think for sure that one's a Boolean. It can be alive or dead unless you follow Schrodinger's cat or something like that. That would be your only scenarios there. Okay, now our methods, born, die, talk, and birthday. So what are they going to do? Well, born is going to make you alive and give you an age. Die is going to make you not alive. Talk is going to output information onto the screen. Oh, we know how to do that. That's pretty easy. And birthday is just going to increase your age by 1. That's what a birthday does. So once we build this class, we can then create objects. And the object, for example, we could make an object called walks. Walks will have a specific name, a specific age, gender, and will be alive, I hope. And then we'll also use the methods to manipulate this walks object. Okay, so we've got a plan. Let's now get ready to execute that plan in code. All right, so let's have up our example. We've been working on one example all year. Okay, so we've been working on this thing, the CS30S example, all year. And at first we just kept putting lines of code into main. Main was just full of code. That was our first unit. But then once we learned about methods, what I said to you guys was, wouldn't it be good if we could separate each unit into different methods, like this? So intro to Java is its own method, methods is its own method, arrays is its own method. Following this logic, we would create another method called classes. But I think we're going to move beyond that now. Okay? Now, I know that these methods would then often call other methods as well. There's more down here as well. But before we go and write another method, we're going to go a whole different direction now. What we're going to do here is not create another method. We're going to create another class. Okay? And well, here's what I mean by that. Up to this point, your programming has always just been one class. It's been this one class sitting inside of your project. Okay? So your project is up here. That's your project, CS30S. This thing here is your what's called the package. Inside that package is the one class that we've been working on. But that's not the only thing you can do. You can add more classes in there, and that's what we're going to do. I'm now going to show you the easy way, I think, to add classes to a project. To me, the easiest way is to, and I want you to do this, right-click on that package. And you know it's a package because it's got a little icon that looks like a package you get delivered in the mail. When you right-click, up comes an option to create something new. Hang on, I got to go back here and try it again. So I'm going to right-click, new, and then right here I've got all the options to make new things. You don't have to do it this way. You can also go File, New File, but then you have to say, oh, okay, this new file is going to be a Java class, and it takes a couple steps. So you can also do it this way. Click this little button here, which creates a new file. But then again, you have to go through those couple extra steps. So I think this is just easier. Right-click, New, Java class. Notice it appears there. All right, so now I'm going to hit that. And it asks you what you should call this thing. Well, we know what we're going to call it. We're going to call it person. Here's your first style note about classes. Classes always start in a capital letter. Okay? That's how you know it's a class, is it starts with a capital letter. After that, you use camel casing. And that way you can distinguish a class from a variable or a method because it's not going to start in a capital letter. All right. So do that and then just hit finish. And your class will come up. It won't look quite like mine. I'm just going to delete some of these comments. Okay, just keep it simple. And it'll look something like this. Okay, we'll just ignore that package line. That doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is what it does. It writes for you a class called person. In a lot of ways, this is very similar to what we've done, except it has no methods in it. It doesn't have like public static void main. It's just a basic class sitting there waiting for you to add code to it. Okay? Now, we're obviously going to keep fleshing this out. We're going to write more and more code to use this, and that's what we're going to do over the week is start making this. But if I go back here for a second to where we were, there's no way at this point that I can connect this class to the other one. I got to figure out a way to write code, because right now, it's not like it's a method down here. It's a whole other file, a whole other class where that code exists. So I'm going to have to show you how to connect, pardon me, to connect the two. But I think we'll stop there for today, because I'm going to move on to the 40S students at this point.